How's it going, everyone? It's Harvey from Weather 1000, and in this video we're going to focus on Invest 91L as well as Invest 92L and see if there'll be an imminent threat to land in the future and determine if they'll develop into a tropical storm in the near future. But before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather-related content. So let's begin by taking a look at Invest 91L at this time, which is currently just to the east of the Caribbean islands, and you can see compared to yesterday, it hasn't made much progress when it comes to the amount of convection, as it seems like the wind shear was a bit more than the computer models anticipated, as it seems like this upper level low that's just to the north of it moved a little bit further southward than anticipated. So as a result, this is dealing with a moderate level of shear at this time, and on the northern portion of this convective activity, we're seeing the wind shear more towards the high range, towards 40 to 50 knots in the upper levels. So it is struggling a bit, as you could see that there's even less convection than there was yesterday, and it's going to continue, it likely will continue to struggle to regain its convection as it heads further westward, because it's gonna the wind shear will continue over the next several days, and it's likely going to move very far south and very close to land. And like I said, the area of convection is going to be very broad for the energy to focus in on one center of circulation, so it will struggle in developing into a tropical cyclone. There's still a possibility, but the chance has lowered compared to yesterday. If I were to show you guys the current wind shear map, we do see that there's the upper level low, and we do see the upper level winds have moved a little bit further southward to where it's now impacting the center of circulation, or what would be the center of circulation of this storm, as it's the thunderstorm activity in this area is now dealing with stronger upper level winds, which is of course disorganizing the core of this storm, which would definitely divert a lot of that energy away from the center of circulation thanks to these strong upper level winds, which is why tropical cyclones don't need a lightly sheared environment for that all that energy to move towards the center of circulation rather than get diverted by strong wind shear. Now, if I were to show you guys computer models, what the GFS model is stating when it comes to Invest 91L, we're going to see that the GFS model, at least initially, isn't very confident in this developing into a tropical storm, because like I said, there's the area of thunderstorm activity around center circulation is going to be a little bit too broad for the energy to focus in right around center circulation for the maximum wind speed to intensify, because look at how large this area of convection is. It spans hundreds of miles, and when the thunderstorm activity expands that far out away from the center circulation, then there's so many other areas of thunderstorm or convective activity that are trying to absorb the energy, the same energy, which would divert a lot of that energy away from the center of circulation, which would divert the air molecules away from the low pressure system. And pretty much an example of this is, let's say you have a sink full of water. Instead of having, let's say you put a hole in where the sink is, of course all that water will spiral faster towards that one hole. However, if you have multiple holes in the sink, then of course that water will spiral around in a lot of different areas towards the hole, and that would divert a lot of that water away from the, let's say, the specific hole, which is this low pressure system, and that would definitely limit the wind speed around the center of circulation, or the velocity of the water in the sink per se. So as a result, this will struggle a bit when it comes to strengthening as it heads further westward, thanks to how broad the area of convection is. And plus, this is expected to move a little bit further southward than anticipated, as it seems like the ridge, the main steering flow that's going to be to the north of it, is going to move a little bit further southward to push this low pressure system further southward. So it's more likely this storm will deal with more land interaction as it heads further eastward, because here's a ridge right here, and it's gonna move sort of right along the Venezuela and Columbia coast. And of course, land interaction will enhance the friction along the surface, and of course, move a lot of that, and of course, would take the storm away from that very warm water, which is necessary for the air to rise, and of course the air pressure to low, thanks to the heat that the water releases. Of course, over land it won't have that, so it's more likely to weaken as this moves over the Venezuela and Colombia coast. So as of right now, it seems like, at least for the short-term future, the GFS model isn't very confident in developing a tropical storm. However, that could change once we head into a long-term future, because if I were to continue to move forward, we see the GFS model wanting to take this area of convection further northward, where it moves up again back into the open Caribbean with no land really that's near the center of circulation. So it is possible that it could regain its intensity over the southwestern Caribbean and potentially develop into a tropical storm, as that's what the GFS model depicts in the very long-term future, where we see a 999 millibar tropical storm just off the Central American coast. So it's definitely something to be aware of for Central America, even if this doesn't develop, because this could bring a heavy flash flood threat. But we're gonna need to wait and see if the wind shear will be light enough. For the most part, the wind shear as it heads to the Caribbean will be light enough, and there won't be a high amount of stable air either. If I were to show you guys water vapor, there is a little bit of stable air just to the north of it, but it isn't a highly concentrated amount of dry air, and there isn't really a strong wind that's gonna push it towards the center of circulation. So it's very well possible for this to develop. And if I were to show you guys the upper level winds as this approaches the Caribbean, we do see the upper level winds are also expected to be very light as this heads further westward. So it does have an open area to develop thanks to the light wind shear and the lack of dry air that's in the southwestern Caribbean. However, the key again will be if we're gonna see all that energy focus in on this center of circulation, where we're going to see the thunderstorm activity sort of converge around this low pressure system rather than diverge away from the center of circulation. So which would push more of that energy towards the center of circulation for the maximum wind speed to increase, and as a result of formidable low pressure system to develop for tropical storm Karl to develop in the southwestern portion of the Caribbean. We're just going to need to wait and see based on that. The GFS model does expect this to strengthen into tropical storm eventually. However, the European model still isn't confident with that scenario. If I were to show you guys the 12Z run, you're going to see that while the European model also does expect the wind shear to be light, we do see that there's not really any well-defined low pressure system that moves towards the southwestern Caribbean. And if I were to show you guys the relative humidity, we do see that the European model, while it does bring that energy towards the southwestern Caribbean, it isn't really leaning on strengthening it, as you see that most of the moisture is just to the east of the center of circulation, and as a result, there isn't a high amount of convection or a strong enough upward motion around this low pressure system compared to this area for the wind speed to strengthen along the surface. So with the European model, as a result of how much thunderstorm activity is just outside the center of circulation, isn't expecting the convection to be strong enough for this to develop into a tropical storm. However, that could change. We need to see how the thunderstorm activity maneuvers over the next several days, and I'll keep you guys updated regarding any shifts in the forecast when it comes to computer model. However, what I could say is that the chance that this does develop into a tropical storm, at least within the next 5 days, is low. That could change once we head beyond the 5-day mark, because the GFS model still does want to develop a tropical storm beyond the 5-day mark, but it does become uncertain beyond the 5-day mark. So I'll keep you guys updated if there's any significant changes when it comes to the certainty and the forecast of this potential tropical storm as this continues ahead further westward. But whether or not, like I said, this develops, Central America should be prepared for a major flood threat as it heads further westward, as well as the northern portion of Colombia and Venezuela. You guys are going to see a lot of rain over the next several days, so you want to make sure if you live near a stream or small creek, right, make sure to take necessary precautions when it comes to the flash flood, because that's definitely something you don't want to mess around with. So make sure to stay prepared for the possibility of major flooding throughout Central America as well as northern South America. Now, taking a look at the 5-day graphical tropical weather outlook, like I said, the chance this develops into Tropical Storm Karl is low at this time for Invest 91L, so that, which is certainly good news. That could change beyond the 5-day mark. I'll keep you guys updated. But the other disturbance we're keeping an eye on is this disturbance right here, which now has a 70% chance of developing within the next 2 days and 80% within the next 5 days, as this will likely become Tropical Storm Julia, and it will move into the over the open waters of the Atlantic. And if I were to show you guys the ensemble members, we do see that most of the ensemble members at this point aren't developing a tropical storm, and if this were to develop into a tropical storm, it would be a little bit later as this approaches southwestern Caribbean, where we do see a few ensemble members wanting to strengthen this a little bit later. But at this point, it seems like the chance is low. We're going to see Tropical Storm Karl within the next 5 days. Beyond 5 days, it becomes uncertain, but there is that possibility it could be a little bit higher. Now, taking a look at Invest 92L at this time, we do see that this looks far more organized than Invest 91L, of course, with how much thunderstorm activity is now occurring around center circulation. There isn't really a strong amount of rotation just yet, but I do expect that to change within the next 48 hours once we do see the convection increase, as well as surface winds increase as a result of the pressure lowering along the surface. So we should begin to see convection very soon, and this should develop into Tropical Storm Julia, as there isn't a high amount of stability or a high amount of wind shear that's going to prevent this into developing into a tropical storm. The good news is that while the forecast does want to shift a little bit more west, at least for long-term forecasts, it seems like both the GFS and European models still are agreeing that this will move out to sea, so it won't go any further west, where maybe it could affect Bermuda or maybe impact the United States, as it seems like there's going to be a trough that's going to move through, that's going to bring those westerly winds further southward and pretty much steer it out to sea and fizzle it out, which is certainly good news. So it isn't much of a worry, at least in the at least in the short-term future as well as the long-term future, which is certainly good news. And the European model agrees with the GFS model as well. Now, taking a look at what the ensemble members are stating, we do see that they do want to eventually take this out to sea. We do have some ensemble members moving this a little bit further west, where we have to wait and see if there's any updates for those. But at this point, I think the most likely scenario is that this will eventually move out to sea and not impact any land, which is certainly good news. Now, taking a look at my forecast when it comes to potential Tropical Storm Julia and Karl. So with Tropical Storm Julia likely to form, but unlikely to affect any land, which is certainly good news. And I'll be keeping tabs with Invest 91L as it continues to head further westward. The chance has lowered that this will develop into a tropical storm within the short-term future, which is good news, but Central America still needs to pay attention in the more long-term future, because there is that possibility this has a higher shot of developing into tropical storm and making landfall as a tropical storm somewhere in Central America. But I'll keep you guys updated regarding the certainty with that forecast. But anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content, and I hope you guys all have a great day.